Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Courtney Octor. I am a business development manager at intiGrow. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join our event, Identity Drift, the silent failure mode of Agentic AI. I am joined by Bob Kalka, the global lead at IBM Security, and Jim Skidmore, who's the vice president of the solutions group here at intiGrow. They will be spearheading this discussion. But before we dive deep into how to solve these problems, let's share with you a little bit about the problems that are happening in our industry. And Jim, I want to pass it to you as you have some information on the CISA side as well as other events that have happened.
Sure. Do you want to advance one? We should be good. Great. Awesome. So I've been kind of involved in advisory role with CISA and other international partners, Australia and various other cyber watchdog groups, if you will. And through the new AI publishing of guardrails and governance best practices, a few things I think are very relevant for our discussion today. So, and as we talk about, if you've been on one of these before with Bob and I or any others, you're understanding the importance of identity and of all the controls around privilege and the changing landscape with NHIs out there and the new world that we live in. So the recommended best practices in the newest guidance include a few salient points I think are going to be very valuable for our discussion today. One of them is limiting privileges of AI agents to the minimum required for its task. If you've been hanging around with us, we've been talking about least privilege and zero trust for, I don't know, Bob, 100 years maybe. So, you know, this is going to be mission critical as we go into agentic AI maturity. Also, we want to restrict the scope of those privileges to the narrowest possible. To allow fine-grained control over allowed actions, just like we would do that with authentication. So we have to control what the agents do. I won't go into all the SOC level items with trust scoring and stuff like that, but we'll hit on that a little bit. If you are familiar with one of the things we'll talk about today called Hashi Vault, requiring just-in-time credentials for high impact or privileged actions is critical to managing agentic AI now. So Bob will touch on that. We also want to verify who the API caller identity is against a user or agent group. I've been talking about this for quite a while. All of our compliance issues out there today are really built around user identification, attestation. All the compliance regimens require that, and we now are, you know, really focused on associating these agent groups with identities within the enterprise to create meaningful association. We want to be able to authenticate these agents with cryptographic proofs before any privilege call can be made. So it's almost like a mini two-factor authentication for these agents. Most relevant to our discussion today, we want to be able to have those agents perform cryptographic attestation, just like we would do with HIPAA or Gramm-Leach-Bliley or FERC or Sarbanes-Oxley or whatever your world demands from a compliance perspective, where we're actually doing that attestation against the agent, thereby against the identity. Because the compliance regimens are not changing. So even though we have all these NHIs out there now, we still have to have that association. So, and then we want to continuously verify identity and authorization at runtime. And we need kind of a central policy point to do this for each request. So Bob will talk about how IBM handles that today. And by the way, Bob, if I can say so, congratulations to the IBM team on being named the quadrant leader for AI governance, which just popped out in the last couple of days. So, yeah, okay. I think we can press on to a couple of case studies, and then I'll hand the ball over to Mr. Kalka here. So a lot of people aren't familiar with that. There are actual cases that have occurred. So most recently, and these are all in the public domain, so we'll go through some of these, but here's just a sample recent one. Air Canada deployed an AI chatbot to handle customer inquiries, which a lot of people are doing these days. That bot actually invented a refund policy that did not exist because it had access to too much LLM data, provided incorrect personal account guidance, exposed internal policy details that were not meant for customers. So the internal workings of the org became visible, and acted outside of its approved script and knowledge base, and really policy guidelines. So, this is all fun and games, and we see these situations occur until it involves court proceedings or data loss or worse, financial loss, right? So a customer relied on the agent to get a refund, booked travel accordingly, and was later denied their refund based on the actions of the bot. Well, the case went to court and started to turn into class action. The court ruled that Air Canada is responsible for the actions and the statements of its AI agent. And this established a huge precedent. So they are now officially looked at, and there are now actual case law study components there where the mistakes are legally binding and are treated like an identity. So this has been occurring not just in Air Canada's case. We had very large occurrence of this, which was a Sev1 takedown of meta assets. People may remember from earlier in the year. Microsoft had a huge issue with this. The past year, UK police had an AI agent go haywire and actually violate their facial recognition system, which was looking at very large, group outings and things like that. There was a very large one at HCA Healthcare. One of the earlier ones was Knight Capital, and that basically led to an attack and compromise and ultimately $440 million capital loss from theft. People may be aware of the Capital One breach last year. A lot of people don't know what caused it, but it was basically a bot acting as level 2 support, which led to that massive compromise. So this is not just talk anymore. These things have been happening for the last couple of years at a pretty high rate of speed. So we're going to talk a little bit today about, how to build posture around your infrastructure to prevent these things from happening. So with that, I would pass it over to Bob Kalka.
Cool. Thanks, Jim. And so, hey, everybody. So just by way of introduction, I lead the global leader for cybersecurity for IBM. I have spent 32 years now at IBM helping to build and help lead all of our cybersecurity investments. During that time, I've been on the road most of that time with folks like you. And so what we started realizing about 2.5 years ago is that as agentic started to become a real thing, we started noticing that the real key cog in the wheel was the ability to manage non-human identities. And so a subtitle of our discussion today would be, what's one of the main reasons that IBM spent $6.3 billion last year to acquire HashiCorp? Because HashiCorp Vault is without a doubt the largest presence of any secrets manager out in the industry, with tens and tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of clients using it and relying on it. And it gets into an interesting discussion here because we've talked about agentic so far, which of course we're going to continue doing. But there's a little micro debate going on in the industry right now, whether, as most people assert, agentic is really just another form of non-human identity. But there are some who are asserting that it should be its own category. It's a third type of identity because it has characteristics of both human and non-human. So regardless where you stand on that, it's just become a big topic. And the combination of our 25 plus years of investment in identity management, actually it's 30 years this year, starting with LDAP directories back in 96. And I've been here for the whole show. But now with the addition of HashiCorp Vault, what you're going to see is the things that we can do are really remarkable. So there's a great saying out there, as you see on this slide, that hackers don't break in anymore, they just log in, right? You used to get compromised credentials, you log in. Most shops have a hard outer shell and kind of a softer interior. And so hackers are getting valid credentials, authenticating and doing stuff and causing problems, needless to say. And depending on who you ask, between 60 and 90% of all attacks are identity-based today. It's some asserts 90s, some assert 60, so I went conservative here. Regardless, it's the major reason. And 84% of organizations have faced identity-related breaches, and that's actually going up as we speak. So one of the big things that we're learning is you not only need the ability to handle the identities for agentic AI, but you also need to be able to show what's going on. And I'm going to cover in detail why that's a big deal in a moment. So if we look at the bigger picture, let's start with the big picture. We're going to look at what are the issues right now with agentic. And I can tell you personally, I've had over 50 client meetings already this year just on this topic. So I've been meeting with CISOs and dev teams and the AI leaders at companies of all sizes all around the world. And the consistency between where the industry is remarkable. And I'll point out a couple of differences based on a client's level of sophistication. So the basic model here is you get a user authenticated to an app, kicks off some kind of agent. You end up with some level of intra-agent calls, embedded agents, et cetera. And eventually you get an agent which is actually calling in to do something like read some sensitive data or overwrite some sensitive data or something like that. And that's the basic picture. The thing that has become apparent to everyone is that until 3 years ago, when you said identity management or identity, everybody's thinking about the user. And so IT, CISO, it's different based on the organization, all have human identity and access management systems that have been around, in some cases, more than 25 years. But those human identity access management systems only go from the user to the first agent. Once you get past that, the human identity access management systems do nothing for this picture. So from here to the left, right, all those embedded agents, the back-end access, et cetera, that's Wild West right now. And I'm going to show you exactly what that means. So what we're seeing is that there's two issues that are coming up in every shop we're walking into. The first is organizational. There is clearly a dynamic between CISO and IT and the dev teams. Because dev teams are generally the ones doing the agents and managing, if they are at all, the non-human identities, and of course CISO and IT are managing the human identities, there's kind of a little bit of inertia, a negative inertia between the teams. And to address this problem of agentic runtime security, you have to be able to orchestrate between both the human and non-human identities. And so it's important that CISO and IT are able to really collaborate with dev. But to be blunt, in the 50-some calls I've made this year on this, the first question I ask the CISO is, how do you collaborate with your dev team on non-human identities? And inevitably, the answer is some form of, well, we have a monthly call where we talk about ideas of how we can collaborate better. And then I immediately ask, so what do you do the following month? And they usually smile and they say, well, we have a call and talk about ideas how we could collaborate with each other. So there's a lot of politeness right now between CISO and IT and dev on this topic. And you have to bust through that. And I know it's easy to say that, but we're going to show you how we're seeing that getting busted through. Because until you're actually materially collaborating versus politely collaborating, you cannot solve this issue. That's the organizational side of this. Then on the technical side of this, I'm going to assert to you, everyone deploying agents right now, and I mean everyone, has these 4 holes across in their systems. And the only difference I see between what's considered to be some of the most sophisticated cyber shops in the world and all of the rest of us huddled masses is that the more sophisticated clients already know these 4 things are present in their environment, but they're not sure what to do about it. Everyone else is like, you discover it and go, oh my goodness, we have this too. So here's what those 4 problems are. The first is accountability. How do you do end-to-end accountability from the user request through an app, through some level of agents, to the backend resource? The way you do that is you have to have a unique identity for every single element here. Meaning, every agent needs to have its own unique identifier. In the cases where those identifiers are being addressed, they're either hard-coded into the code by the developers, which anyone who's done cyber for 5 minutes knows is a horrific practice that's easily to hack. And then some of the better shops are saying, well, we're going to use a secrets manager like HashiCorp Vault, and we're going to issue a secret. That's a good idea, but what everybody's doing today are static secrets. Static secrets for something that pops up, does its thing, and kind of disappears is a really bad idea. Because if that static secret gets, of course, hacked, then it can be reused and nobody has any idea. So what this is addressing is that to do agentic identity correct, what you should be issuing are dynamic credentials that are short-lived, narrowly scoped, and tied back to an original user request so it can't be hacked and used for other reasons. The state of the art of everyone out there today is that we think we're doing good if we're using a secrets manager to issue a static secret. Until we got to agentic, it was not really that big of a deal, but with agentic, it's become a big deal immediately. So you have to be able to issue to every agent a dynamic credential, which is short-lived, narrowly scoped, tied back to a user, so you can get intent and stuff like that. That's the first problem. The second problem is overprivilege. What we're seeing is a very common thing with the developers of the agents, because by the way, sometimes it's officially sanctioned corporate agentic projects, and there's even more of ad hoc employees at home with Copilot deploying something and deploying it, and IT has no idea the stuff is out there. So what happens is whoever's writing this code will say, you know, this agent really only needs read access to that database, but you know, someday it might need write access, so I'm just going to put that in too. And who's checking that? What is the governance process to look for that and approve that stuff? It doesn't exist in almost every shop. So there's problem number 2. Problem number 3, you start delegating this overprivilege, and before long, you've got mega overprivilege agents doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And there's one practice in particular of impersonation where the agent might say, well, I know I should have an identity to be proper, but I don't feel like dealing with it myself, so I'm just going to literally take the identity of the human that kicked off this whole thing and impersonate the user. The problem with that, of course, is you've lost your audit trail, because now it looks like the user's doing something that's actually some agent that you don't even know what it is. And then the fourth problem, the fourth hole in every shop we're walking into right now is the last mile. And this one is hard to believe when you realize it, but this is the one that sends CISOs flipping out, which is the last mile problem, which when that last agent is calling to do something material, say to the backend database, access sensitive data, overwrite data, or do something even more, then this is downstream from the original request from the user. And so standard security practice would be is let's look at that access from that agent to that, say, database based on the current risk profile of what's happening right now. You should check that that ACL is still accurate. And who's doing that last mile check? Nobody. So these problems are present everywhere we're walking into. And because it's not just that CISO and IT and dev are kind of not really collaborating enough. And it's not just, oh, well, they're not putting identity in there. It all comes in together, and it's happening at the speed of light, right? As one of my colleagues likes to say, just imagine how much work goes into proper identity governance for a human. You determine what role do they have, what access do they need, you set up that access, you manage it over their life cycle, and then at least you're supposed to then get rid of all that access in the user when they no longer need access over the life of that person in the company. Now imagine that process is happening at least once every second with an agent, right? You get the idea of, wow, the way we've done it just doesn't scale to where it is. So what do you do about it? Let's, because every vendor, right? All of us out here today saying, oh, agentic is big and you got to do something. And there's people out there saying, oh, so buy my new web browser plugin to start looking for stuff, right? That's lightweight stuff. We're going to show you the heavyweight of how do you actually solve the problem. 5 steps. What it comes down to is you got to look at orchestration, governance, and observability. Now, why do you need orchestration, governance, and observability? Because there's 5 steps to actually addressing this correctly. Number 1 is you have to make sure that every agent has a unique identity that is ideally dynamic, short-lived, narrowly scoped, and tied back to user intent. Secondly, we're getting into discussions all the time now, again, about zero trust, which is you want to make sure you have least privileged access. Third is you got to tie the action to intent. Is what this agent trying to do congruent with the original request that the user made to the far left side of this? Fourth is you have to have that last mile check. When something sensitive is going to happen, then someone check that either according to the policy, that access and the current risk profile still warranted. And if it's sensitive enough, then do some kind of human in the loop SIBA type activity. And I'm going to try to show you a demo of that here in a few minutes to show you what that looks like, of actually being able to get a human to approve it before you go on. All right. And we'll talk. And then the 5th one is, do you have an end-to-end audit path? To do all that, you've got to have orchestration between the right and the left side of this diagram, which is between the human identity system and the non-human identity system. You need governance that is congruent across all of them, so you can set policies such as when do you need to introduce human in the loop. And then observability is a huge one, because observability is about 2 types of identity observability for agentic AI. The first is proactive posture management, which is where do we have issues in non-human identities? And we'll get to that in a sec. And then there's the real-time threat side of it, which is how do you detect agentic AI doing things that it shouldn't be able to do in real time. Now, let me tell you what exactly that means. On the posture management side of this, first, can you find all the hard-coded secrets in the agentic code? Secondly, this is actually the one that gets CISO and IT and developers to be able to collaborate better, is the ability to detect in real time secrets manager sprawl. What do I mean by that? In almost every shop we're walking into right now, we're finding that the dev teams are using between 20 and 30 different secrets managers. They'll have 14 copies of HashiCorp Vault Community Edition, the free version, that different dev teams are using. And other dev teams will be using the certificate or the key managers built into AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure, or whatever their cloud of choice is. And so 20 to 30 different secrets managers, and who's doing governance and coordination between them? Nobody. So what we're seeing is that the CISOs and IT are going, we have to get our handle around these non-human identities, especially the agentic. And so what if we set up a single secrets manager like HashiCorp Enterprise Edition, and we'll provide that as a service to you dev teams? And what the reaction usually is, oh my gosh, I had no idea we had so many secrets managers. Yeah, it's not such a great practice. I know you care more than I do, sort of, but okay, I could see how this could get me into trouble. And okay, so it allows you to collaborate and get a single secrets manager for managing the identities for all of the agents. Inevitably, you will have some additional dev teams that start going off and doing one-offs. But if you have this identity observability looking at that posture, as soon as the dev teams start using another secrets manager, it pops up in front of you and you can see it, so you can manage it. On the threat side of it, this is really super cool. On the threat side of it, can you detect, just think if you could do this, when a new agent gets deployed, your observability tool notices it. And if that agent starts doing things without calling out to something like HashiCorp Vault to get that dynamic, short-lived, narrowly scoped tied to a user identity, then it flags it for you immediately. That's what we're talking about here. What we're able to do between IBM Verify and IBM HashiCorp Vault is give you that level of observability. No one else has this, not even close. The ability to do orchestration governance between all of the identities and then the real-time detection of whether you have secrets manager sprawl and where our agents doing stuff without an identity is something very unique to us, and why we partner with our top partners like intiGrow to help you address this stuff. So let's get into it a little bit more of how we actually do this stuff. The first piece is how IBM Verify and HashiCorp Vault work together to do this. Verify doing the human side, Vault doing the non-human side. Now, let me be very, very clear. If you don't have IBM Verify and rather you're using Okta, Ping, ForgeRock, Entra, whatever, this works with those as well. So we've written this in a hybrid way that'll work with any IDP. You'll see there's some integration points between Vault and Verify that make it more effective than one of the other IDPs. But for doing this basic end-to-end thing like I just showed you, it'll actually work with any IDP. Now, what I'd like to do, I'm going to take a risk here, Jim, and see if I can reshare. I'm going to show you a demo of what this looks like when an IDP and a non-human identity system like HashiCorp Vault are actually interacting. So let me go back to here. Whoops. Let me stop the share and reshare. Always risky. But we're going to go for it. I'm just going to share the whole screen here. All right, cool. That should work then. All right, so I brought up a live copy of an agent that we wrote. And I've got an agent log so you can see what's actually happening here. And so I've got a simple agent, which is a front end to a financial, to a bank. And I'm going to do things like, hey, get account info. See if it timed out or not. Okay, no, it's working. Oh, yeah, here, I got to restart it. My bad. I knew it was been a while. We have it logged out, obviously, after some amount of time. So I'm going to use my passkey to log in to get access to this agent. And once again, front end to the bank. And here we go. And I'm going to bring up the agent log so you can see. And I'm going to see get account info. And what you're going to see is the agent here, right, has an identity. And the user, of course, me as the user, has an identity. And what we're doing is we're feeding it into a token exchange. So the agent identity and the user identity come in. And if you look at the gory detail here of this stuff, then what you're going to see is a token has been issued, which is dynamic, short-lived, narrowly scoped. And you'll see it gave me my account information. Now, let's say I want to do something like transfer $100 from savings to checking. What it's going to do is the agent will present its token. The user presents I present my token as a user. We're going to issue another token coming out of HashiCorp Vault, which is saying, okay, our policy says anything under $500, you don't need a human in the loop. So I'm going to authenticate that both are who they say they are. And then I should allow this thing to go through. And what you're going to see in the agent activity window is it lays out exactly what it's doing. Oh, I said $1,000. So I got ahead of myself, but that's actually not bad because it proves that it actually works. Is I did 1,000. I set the policy at 500. I'm trying to transfer $1,000. And it's saying I'm waiting for approval denial. Well, look. In my IBM Verify app on my phone, it says, do you want to transfer that $1,000? Human in the loop. I just hit it. It's now literally going and issuing a token that allows the higher level of access through HashiCorp Vault is enabling that. And then I just transferred the money. So there's a very simple example for you of actually doing this in real time. Okay, so that's this piece. Let's go back to here. That's this piece of Vault and Verify as an IDP working together to actually do this. What you just saw is essentially this workflow using OAuth and using Spiffy that allows this all to happen. And you can automate all this as you just saw that. So this is just a diagram of what you just saw. I know there's a lot on this. We're going to share these slides with you. But just to see, there's a lot of orchestration that's going on here. And we've already got it out of the box inside of our tooling, which is really super cool. So next is what I want to show you is I've mentioned the observability side. And I mentioned there's two kinds of posture that you got to look out for. The first is hard coding secrets. The second is looking for the secrets manager sprawl. The secrets manager sprawl and the detection of a new agent, and if it's not calling for an identity, we flag it. That's delivered through a product called Verified Identity Protection, which I'm going to show you in a minute. We have a separate tool for determining the hard-coded secrets, and that's an extension of HashiCorp Vault called Vault Radar. So what it does, it uses over 300 algorithms to look for Git supported and collaboration platforms, integrates with Jira, Confluence, etc., and allows you to do remediation on it. So for the first piece of identity observability posture, finding the hard-coded secrets, that's done through Vault Radar. For the rest of it, finding the secrets manager sprawl and finding when an agent pops up, is doing things and hasn't got a unique identifier, like you just saw it had to with the token exchange I showed you in that demo a minute ago. But if you have an agent pops up, starts doing things, never gets that, never goes to that token exchange, we can find that in real time. That's done through a product called Verify Identity Protection. This tool works with any IDP, not just IBM Verify. Works with the Oktas and everybody else of the world. What it does is it builds an identity access graph for everything happening in your systems. It looks at the cloud flows, the network flows, endpoint activity, and all of the identity activity. Puts it inside of an AI engine that is now almost 5 years old of learning what healthy and unhealthy human and non-human identity actions look like. And so we have an entire graphical analysis set up. So when we notice something, we can show you right from the root of how did you get there. That then delivers continuous identity risk and threat detection, such as an agent popping up, doing stuff and not getting an identity, right? And then finally, the ability to kick off mitigation and remediation workflows. Remember when, for everybody in the SOC using a SIM tool, 2018, 2019, all the craze was to deploy a SOAR tool, right? Security Orchestration Automated Response. We acquired Resilient Systems. We call it QRadar SOAR. There's a number of SOAR tools on the market, and those solutions had limited uptake just because of there's a lot of discipline issues and a lot of shops around using them. So you'd have some run books set up, but there was often some headwinds on that. So what we have the ability to do is to kick off run books to address what you see, such as an agent not calling to an identity and taking action on it. We're also about to come out with support to actually fold that into like a modern SOAR tool like IBM Concert, where you can do a risk analysis of all the things it finds and then actually take action based on that. So all of this is done through Verify Identity Protection. It looks at both human identities as well as non-human, including agentic. So this is just focused on the agentic side because of today's topic, but there's as rich of a set of things for all your human identity side with like shadow directories and shadow identities and stuff like that. What it does for agentic is discovers every agent. We've got the agents all have a similar tail to them of how they operate. And so we detect that and identify an agent. We look at unauthorized activity, like doing something without getting an identity, with its dynamic, short-lived, narrowly scoped tied to a user. Then we look for the behavior and also look at the governance of that. And that's all delivered through VIP. So I've already given you most of this, that these are the use cases on Agentic that come up the most. Where do you have an unknown agent? Where is it getting access? Where is it getting access without getting a unique identifier first, right? That kind of stuff comes through VIP. And this is the big picture of where the magic comes from. We do the graphical analysis by pulling in, once again, network cloud endpoints, identities, send it through this AI engine with a graphical analysis, and then kicking off some kind of response to it. So let me show you an example of this for Agentic. So this here is IBM Verified Identity Protection. Once again, it works with any IDP that's out there, works with HashiCorp Vault, works with the other secrets managers out there. It's pulling in all this information, and there's about 150 to 170 things that it's trained to look for, and with more coming out, I mean, literally on a weekly basis. And one of the things I'm going to show you is shadow activity, and in particular, let's see if we can find, here we go, shadow assets. What you're looking at is a live view of the environment that I'd set up. It's a pretty small environment, which is why there's only 5 entries here. But what I'm showing is that there are 5 copies of HashiCorp Vault being used across the infrastructure. So when I said there's secrets manager sprawl, if you're the CISO IT team, you can see that your dev teams are using 5 different copies of the same secrets manager. And you can see which one of them are the community edition versus the enterprise edition. So as I said earlier, in most shops, you'll see 20 or 30 entries on this tab, and there'll be all different kinds of secrets managers. So you as CISO and IT can provide that core secrets manager to the team. And if the developers start downloading additional ones, you're going to see it right here. So there's your ability to do that posture management and find the secrets. Now let's look over risky access. Look at this, HashiCorp Vault bypass, assuming Vault in this case, this is why we're looking at Vault. If that's your core secrets management engine, then what you see here is there are 5 different apps or agents that have been detected that are making calls without going to HashiCorp Vault to get an identity. So this is the secrets or identity bypass that I've been talking about so far in this. And when it happens, when a new agent pops up and it does anything other than get the identity, it shows up right here. So it gives you full visibility. And I will tell you, this is so useful for the orchestration between the CISO, IT, and dev teams, is that you can see this happening. And as I said, you can even kick off immediate remediation efforts based on seeing this stuff. So that's just a quick demo for you of the visibility that you can get by using an identity observability tool like this for the agentic stuff. It's really quite remarkable. We looked at everybody on the market, and this is frankly the only tool that we saw that could go this far. So that's what VIP is. You know, the acronym is. It's kind of cute, but yeah, we didn't do it on purpose. But that's what VIP does. It takes all these sources, does a graphical analysis, puts it through the AI engine and then allows you to kick off things. So what I've shown you so far is the ability to address those 4 core issues: the accountability and overprivilege and the impersonation in the last mile, and the ability to watch it in your environment and detect when people are going around the policies that you have. So it's pretty remarkable what we do here between these tools. So that's the big picture of what we do, is that between Vault, VIP, and Verify, or your IDP of choice, is we're able to address those 4 core issues by giving you the orchestration and governance between human and non-human identities, and then give you that observability to see the problems as they're popping up in real time. So So once again, I've been doing security here 32 years. We are investing massively, especially based on the HashiCorp acquisition, to extend our leadership even more. Because I would assert to you, what you're hearing from other vendors on this stuff is maybe some threat detection or a web browser plugin, which has gotten popular weirdly lately. This is light years beyond that. This is actually giving you the tools to orchestrate a well-governed policy for the agents with full observability of what's going on. Now, we partner with, select partners that know how to do this well. And so needless to say that Jim and Courtney and the team at intiGrow are amongst the best in the world. And so, Jim, why don't you give them an idea of how you can help them even beyond this?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. That was a real mouthful. But if there are further questions anybody has going forward, we're happy to address them specifically. For folks that are attending today, and for a lot of folks that we meet out in the industry, there are some things we do to help them get started and to help them get kind of on the road to figure out where in their, I don't want to say infancy, but where their posture is currently from kind of an AI governance perspective. As Bob said, we do a whole lot more than, not just NHIs, but real identity management use cases as well. But these are a few things that we do to help people kind of get started. So, the IBM intiGrow Identity Security Posture Assessment you'll see on the left, as Bob was stating, helps us to take you through that identity observability of your own IDP infrastructure to get a little bit of a feel for where you're at, the current state. So we're able to help folks, map that back to what their goals are and what adheres to security policy, because everything's changing so quickly, right? As Bob mentioned earlier, we're seeing the agentic part of it pop up really fast. There's bots going out everywhere. Everything is everywhere at this point. So what that enables us to do is to help you understand where you're at currently. We do identity and data compliance health check and remediation kind of pre-assessment so that you can gain an understanding of where you're at. A lot of people now have to do attestation, as we've talked about in the past here, which is basically associating an identity with any specific user in your central directory, or your LDAP, as we call it. So those are periodic updates, then we can automate that process for folks or help them to understand what they need, even just to have log events captured and sent to, if you're aggregating data in a SIM for automating compliance reports, if you're, wherever in the process you are, we help you to understand and how to automate that process. Zero trust maturity. A lot of folks were able to help understand, what the voyage looks like to least privilege, because as we all know, the more privilege, the more risk. And without question, a lot of folks have challenges looking at that. For us, it's easy as a third party because we can just say, hey, there's no reason for all of these privilege requirements here if someone's just logging into a nation's network share for a bunch of people. There's, they're all basically the same. That's just one example, but we're able to help you to kind of understand what that looks like and how to get to least privilege. You'll see a lot of tools out there that will say, oh, just plug, your ERP or plug something else in here and we'll get you to least privilege. Well, most people have many, many applications, not just one. So we don't look at that as a simple issue. And some people have very complex network schemas out there. Really, I think the other part that's most befitting of today is if you look at AI corporate policy development, a lot of our clients are still in their infancy, I would say here. As Bob mentioned earlier, we both meet with people constantly and try to figure out where they're at in the continuum. But we help people to take a look at what their LLM really development is and how that's growing over time. And then obviously look at the governance of all the people that are accessing all that data. We also look at what the use cases are for that specific AI use, and help them to understand what the ramifications are based on the workflows that they currently have in place. So that's something that we're happy to, review with folks. Another thing that we do on this side is what we call business value assessment. A lot of people have a zillion tools and they're not even sure what they're all doing sometimes. There's shelfware out there that people are paying maintenance on that they probably shouldn't. So we help them kind of to map really accurate security tools to specific posture requirements without having to go the extra mile and say renew something that you don't even know is adding value to the enterprise, right? And a lot of people know some stuff isn't, but maybe they plan to use it one day, maybe not. So anyway, these are just some of the things that we do for folks to help them get started. These are no costs, sort of $0 mini SOWs that we do with folks. And that's, part of the value that we bring is sort of a strategy of full life cycle integration and kind of resale based organization, along with some identity managed services as well. So that's really kind of what we do for these.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So there we go. So why don't we see if we have any questions based on the volume of insights that we've given you guys here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, looks like something's in here. Yeah, I do see one, Bob.
Okay.
How do you do access to end resources at a fine grain level in the case of dynamic credentials?
How do you do access to end resources at a fine grain level? Are you saying just-in-time provisioning? Yes, it is just-in-time provisioning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the second part of it is asking the right question. Will the end resource be able to handle that in a magnitude scale? What you try to do is dummy it down so the back-end app doesn't have to worry about doing that. So if you say that, okay, we know that to access, let's say do that $1,000 balance transfer, that you need a certain level of access. What HashiCorp Vault is kicking out is the dynamic credential that has that, right, defined. Here is the level of access that's needed, and this is what we're going to log in with that level of credential. And then once again, it goes away. I mean, the most common thing that people are doing is they're using Vault to do the token exchange, and then they give it an instruction. They pre-program an instruction. As soon as it does that activity, then eliminate the identity and log out. And that's kind of at least what the most common practice is now. But let's be clear, to say it's the most common practice is that so few people are doing it. It's the bleeding edge right now.
Yeah, that's expiring credentials we don't often see.
Right. I mean, everybody jokes that, I left that company 10 years ago and I still have accounts that I can get into there, kind of thing. Right? That's where you get to the non-deterministic versus deterministic thing.
Okay. Check. Okay.
Okay.
Again.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
I think
I think we're good otherwise. Thanks to all for attending today. If there are further questions that you have, I believe Courtney will be reaching out with some information for everybody here, including the link to that CISA update I was talking about earlier in the broadcast. Thanks very much again to Bob for joining today. We're very appreciative. And again, congratulations on there being actually an AI governance quadrant now and being in the lead.
Woohoo. Party
So,
on.
so
We're happy. We're honored. All right. Thanks, guys. Look forward
take
to
care.
chatting.
Thank you.
Take care.